Hello, everybody, and welcome to We Say Things, Episode 2, sponsored by Nobody. My name is SUNSfan, joined by the great, the one, the only, syndereN. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm great. I woke up for this, so great start to my day, as it will be in the future always, more or less, unless we change the recording time. So I
Good.
sound great, right? I sound like I totally didn't just wake up for this.
You sound terrific. Thanks for letting us know. Really appreciate that. I'm
Awesome.
the one
Oh, no
recording at
problem.
2 a.m., by the way, just saying.
Yeah, that's
Although
like your afternoon.
I was
at this
going to say
point.
the exact same thing. Anywho, on to the actual podcast. It is now available on all major podcast apps, my friend. That means Apple, that means Google, that means Spotify. I've had some issues with Apple because this could be a rant in the future, by the way. Really don't like Apple. Really not a fan. If you can't find it on Apple, just type SUNSfan or syndereN and it should pop up. But I think it should be fine for the most part. As always, you can go to sunsfan.gg/podcast to see all the links to all the special places you can find it. And syndereN, I don't know if you know this, but if people rate our podcast highly, it helps. Can you believe it?
Oh,
That's
I guess we have to earn it though, with some really great content today. So people are
Yes.
gonna love it.
And maybe one day we can equalize our sound and you can not be really loud and then really soft right
Why
afterwards.
Is that happen? I feel like Zoom is messing with me. I don't know.
It's not.
I don't
It's
know what it is.
you. It's because you're talking louder than normal. Okay.
Okay, I'll be soft for you.
But another announcement, and we did tweet this earlier. We have a hard schedule that we're going to try to keep to. This show will be weekly with or without syndereN. Okay. I'm doing this weekly regardless, unless there's unforeseen.
Have a hard schedule that we're gonna try to keep.
Just shut your mouth and listen. All right.
Perfect. You should go into politics. I think you've got what it takes.
No, I have too many skeletons in my closet to be a politician at this point, I think, which we can get to later. So, yeah, the schedule itself, every Tuesday, 2 a.m. Pacific Standard, 11 a.m. CEST. That is when it will be broadcast live on twitch.tv/SunsFanTV. Of course, later that day, it will be available on all the podcast stations, on YouTube. Yeah. So that is every Tuesday. You can look forward to hearing from two jackasses. And yeah.
Okay.
Does that sound good, syndereN?
Yeah, I'll take it. That's an okay insult. It's used way too little nowadays, actually.
Jackass? I agree. It's because a show called Jackass got really popular and just kind of lost its meaning, you know?
Yeah, I suppose. It's just like when it comes to Dota, people are so uncreative. You know, I can appreciate a creative flame or like a well thought through insult.
How is
It's way
Jackass?
more fun than somebody.
How is that? Jackass
It's not
is,
like no, it's not very well thought through. It's different from the norm. You know, like everybody just says the same thing.
Oh, I
Blah blah
see.
blah. You're a blah blah blah. Let's not throw profanities.
I've never
Please
heard
sponsor
anybody
our
say you're a
podcast.
blah, blah, blah. That's interesting. Huh.
Okay, very stupid.
So before we talk about game-related stuff, syndereN, I have a bit of a, and this is going to be a recurring thing, and it's called a rant, okay? Occasionally, if I'm feeling very passionate about a subject, I will rant about it, and I encourage you to make your own rants as well, syndereN, although I cannot see that because you're a very agreeable person.
Oh, I can definitely have things I can rant about.
Really?
Such as my voice. Yep, go on.
I don't know what that means, but anywho, I would like to rant about people spoiling stuff on Twitter and social media because it really grinds my gears. Now, before I get into the actual rant, this is like, first of all, I don't care about the Avengers because I watched the first two and they were like the worst movies ever. So I know people are going to flame me for that. I really hate that series. But Game of Thrones is amazing. There's like no denying that. If you don't like Game of Thrones, something's wrong with you, right? And it's become a ritual every Sunday that I just don't open up Twitter from the time it starts till whenever I've watched it. All social media is gone. Why is that? Why is that a thing? Why do I need to do that? Why do people with a lot of followers need to tweet spoilers? That is the question. And that is what really grinds my gears. So I boiled this down to a couple categories, syndereN. I want you to know if you agree with me.
Okay.
There's a few types of people that would do this.
Okay.
The first are the sadistic types. Okay, they enjoy spoiling things for people. You get this huge investment in. This is why I don't like the sports analogy that people bring up. Like, oh, I can tweet about live basketball. Like, that's not the same. you're investing all this time into, and there's so many different variables in a show than a win-loss versus a sport, right? So there's two types of sadistic people. There's the very young people that are just too immature to understand. It's just fun for them, which, let's be honest, that's a lot of people. And then there's the second person who's just a literal psychopath. They have no regard for anybody's feelings. And believe it or not, there's a lot of psychopaths in the world. Let's not kid ourselves here. They just enjoy people's pain. Okay? Now, the second type of person is the type of person that justifies.
You said the second type of person 3 times already?
No.
I'm confused now.
The first type of person is sadistic, but there's 2 categories
so we're
to the
talking
sadistic.
about the psychopath now.
Yes. No.
Which category were the kids?
For God's sake, just listen, syndereN. All right. I'll go over it
there
again.
We go. That's how I want to hear my rants.
There's
That's
two
the voice I'm going.
There's 2 types of people. Okay? One is sadistic. Of the sadistic people, there's 2 categories. Okay? There's the immature and the young, and then there's the people that are just actual pieces of shit. Okay? That's number 1. Number 2.
But they can't overlap.
They probably of course. There's young people that are pieces of shit too.
You can tick all the boxes for your bingo.
All right. The second type of person.
Yes.
You've made me lose my train of thought here. This type of person kind of bothers me more because the sadistic people, they usually get to being sadistic by being born that way because something's fucked up, or like nurture, like, the nature versus nurture, where you're just born that way, or some bad things happen, you just turn into a real piece of shit. But the people that, and this is the second type of person we're getting to, that justifies spoiling it, somehow has justified it in a way that makes sense to them, and they still tweet out spoilers. I don't understand it, and I will never understand it. Now, if you're somebody with 10 followers and you're just doing it with friends, that's different. If you're somebody with, here's an example. I'm not going to bring up a name, although you can probably decipher it. Somebody that typically releases esports news or any news in general to the wide public, literally tweeting spoilers to 100,000 plus people. How is that okay? And it's within an hour of the show. That's fucked up. That's really stupid, and I hate it. That's my rant of the week. What are your opinions on that, syndereN?
I'm just trying to understand what the motivation is more than anything, honestly. Like, I'm not taking their side. I'm just trying to think, what kind of mindset do you have when you tweet out this stuff? Like, it's going to grow my following. Oh, I'm super excited about this thing I just saw. And when people interact with it, it's going to, it's just fun because I think one of the driving forces behind people tweeting spoilers is that it's kind of like when you tweet live sports or live esports, not because of the content, but because of the amount of interaction you get per time, right? This is something that's everybody is super hyped about right then, and you're assuming a lot of people have watched it live, and you're assuming that the people that haven't watched it are just going to stay off social media, which we can discuss if that's a good or a bad thing, that's the assumption, but it probably is. And they're just excited and want to share it with a lot of people. And if you look at it and you check out these tweets that are spoiling, they have shitloads of interaction, almost always, because it's something where you can be sure when I tweet about this in the hot moment, there will be a lot of interaction on it. So, unfortunately,
for every one,
it's a good strategy. But
for every one interaction you get, I guarantee there's 10 people who are super pissed about it. That's my theory. Because you can't de-like something. There's no negative like.
Well, you can respond and say, you piece of shit, and there should be like 200 responses saying that, but there generally isn't that many.
So
I don't know.
Here's the thing, though. You're having a private conversation, basically, with just publicly. You know what I mean? You should be having these conversations. Like, I've seen a lot of people tweeting at each other, it's like blah, blah, blah. Private message them on fucking Discord or Skype or the phone. Text them. Why do you need to use Twitter? That makes no sense. So stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest question here is who the burden is on. To be honest, if you should justify, is it like the burden is on the people who don't want to get spoiled, or the burden is on the people that have already watched the show? Like, how long can you not talk about it for? Then
that's a good question.
If you don't want to spoil people, like, when are you allowed to talk about the episode publicly? Is it 1 day, 1 week, 5 hours? Like, when can you assume everybody has watched it? Because, like, there are plenty of people now, if you start tweeting about Game of Thrones episode from last week, that they are going to be like, I haven't seen it yet. You just spoiled me. Like, what are you going to do? Like, how long? When is the grace period over?
Yeah, that I don't know. Like if you're posting
Because
a spoiler,
that's the problem, right? That is the problem. If you're the person tweeting and you're excited about it and you want to tweet about it, when do you feel like you can do it? Because there's no consensus in that. So then you could just be like, you know what?
Agree.
It's people's own responsibility. If they don't want to get spoiled, watch the show first and then go on social media, because else I can never talk about it.
Right.
Right. So
no, that is a good argument. I agree with that sentiment, and I think like the problem with that is that doesn't really enter their minds because they're doing it 10 minutes after the episode. I feel like that's just a completely different story, you know?
I mean, that's okay, but when
and if you're
you
tweeting something and you preface it with "this is a spoiler," that's fine. You can always do that.
That's a different story. I could definitely agree
totally
with that. I think that's the bare minimum. Like, if you do want to tweet about a show, preface it with a spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, or whatever, so people have to, like, you know, get through that first or whatever.
Right.
You could even do a tweet that has spoiler alert, Game of Thrones most recent episode, and then it's a link to a different page. So it's not even in the tweet. People who want the spoiler can actively go and see what you think.
Yeah.
That is a great way of going about it. And I think it's good. Honestly, I think the perfect solution is one where people that are super excited about it can social media about it, so they can have a conversation with all their following and whatever, just without spoiling it for everybody else. And that's the perfect way of doing it, right?
Yep.
Then I think it's great that they tweet about it 2 minutes after, because you're hyped, you know? You want to talk to people about it. That's probably the best way to do it.
Agreed. All right. Let's move on to games, my friend.
Great rant. All right, let's go.
I'm going to have a lot of those in the future. I'm a very negative person, as you I have a whole list of shit that I want to rant about, and I can't wait to get to them. But we'll limit it to 1 minute, or I don't know if next week we'll have it, but we'll try to spread it out. So Dota 2.
I think it's great to have one rant per week. I'm sure you could do that for a while.
Actually. Yeah, but that's feeding my negativity. I'm trying to become, believe it or not, a more positive person, and it's difficult when I get reminded.
Going great so far.
Like if I could actually, and this is not a joke, I could talk shit about pickup trucks for an entire episode. I cannot tell you how much I despise pickup trucks. That's just a random example. Okay.
Then you definitely have footage for the whole year already, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll just split that up into 10 episodes of the same subject. All right, Dota 2. NIP beat eHome 3-2 in the Dota Pit Minor, so they will be going to...
Are we allowed to talk about that yet, or is that a spoiler?
It's implied that we'll be talking about esports related things. It's not a Game of Thrones episode, right?
Sure.
So talk about that, because I didn't get to watch much.
Well, basically, I think those two were two of the favorite teams to go far, so it wasn't very surprising. The finals was really, really close. I think the 5th game went like 70 minutes. And yeah, they were alternating who won the games, basically. My biggest gripe with that tournament, I think it was good that NIP won, to be honest. I think they were probably the best team. It was them or eHome. It wasn't like a fluke that those teams made the finals. It looked like they were both, honestly, toward the end, clearly better than Alliance, who got 3rd. But that tournament, if I can rant about something this time, the group stage of that tournament was the worst format I think I've ever seen in Dota.
That's what I heard people say. Tell me about it.
Okay, I'll give you a quick rundown of how this tournament worked. So there were 2
Wait,
groups
hold on.
of 4,
Before you
right?
get started, you need to, when you rant about something, you need to get aggressive with your talking. You can't just talk about it normally, okay?
I mean, you know me. I'm a pretty calm person, so this is my ranting voice.
Disappointing.
I'm really angry right now. Okay, so basically the group stage format was 2 groups of 4, right? It's 8 teams, and they play each other in best of 3s in, I think it was GSL format. And so they played these best of 3 GSLs over a couple of days that are literally only for seeding into upper bracket. So 2 4-team groups generated seeding. Everybody started upper bracket. And that means in that group stage, some teams were trying really hard to win for kind of very little reason, and others were just like, fuck it. Like, NIP picked a different heroes every game, more or less, and treated it completely like scrims. So from an entertainment perspective, I mean, you could basically consider it so many show matches instead of matches that actually progress the tournament, because in the end, they're going to go into the same bracket anyway. Now, that's one thing. If you want to do a lot of show matches like that, that's fine. But if it results in you having the first 4 rounds of lower bracket be best of 1s because of that, that's real bad. Like, Dota is a best of 3 game, at least, and best of 5 for finals is great, of course. But like, that decision, to me, if you logistically can't have let's say you can't have the stage for long enough or whatever, then use those best of threes to place some teams in the lower bracket so they have a purpose. And then you're going to have less games on the main stage, and then maybe you can make best of threes earlier in the lower bracket or even from round one. I don't know what the point of this like tournament structure was. I just didn't understand it. Like this group stage had, I think, decent viewership, but it was just pointless, you know? Like imagine you had that in sports, right? Like you just had what analogy could you draw?
I can
Like
come
let's
up with
say
an analogy.
in the NFL, right? In the NFL, everybody plays each other once to find out who has home field advantage, and then they all play again. Like that's the kind of thing it would be, which would even be a bigger advantage, I guess, than what happened here. So,
Are you ever okay with best of ones in playoff format? We've seen a
I
lot
think
of
they're
it like in the lower bracket or something like that, right? That's very common.
Yeah, I think they're a necessary evil sometimes. My favorite best of one format is round robin because if you have enough teams that play best of ones, they start being representative. Like if you have, I think there was a TI where you had 16 teams all play each other once in round robin, and then it was best of ones. And I think at that point it starts becoming more significant because Dota has some variants, like all games do. Uh, and I think that's why best of ones can be a bit dangerous. There's the variance of the game itself, and then there's like strategy. Is the better team winning when you play one game? Because what if you are one trick pony that has one strategy and that can just get banned out? You know, all these arguments. Um, so many team round robins, I don't have a problem with it. They are generally used for seeding. I think did TI have it one year with best of ones, and then top 8 were winner bracket, top 8 bottom 8 loser bracket or something. I think so, maybe something like that.
TI
And of
4
course,
might have been something like that.
yeah, they had the bubble race too. And then all TIs I think have had first round lower bracket be best of ones, which is a logistics thing for as far as I know. Because if turning those best of ones into best of threes add an entire extra event day, it's debatable when it's round one of the lower brackets. Like
What do
it's
you
the
think?
weakest teams, arguably. I personally would love if everything was best of three in that
Right.
big of a
I know
tournament.
that
Like TI is
everybody.
the
Yeah.
the championship. So
Okay. So the NFL and NCAA basketball, from like March Madness, as we call it, you have these long seasons, right? And
yeah.
then the playoffs are all best of one, which makes it like mega hype. You get way more viewership. Can anything like that ever be done for Dota, do you think?
See, I like my favorite sport to compare to is tennis because I understand that better than basketball. For example, I never really watched much basketball,
How
and
dare you?
I just think sports are inherently different from esports just because of the playing field itself. Like basketball doesn't really have variance in the same way as Dota does, or tennis doesn't have variance in the same way that Dota does. That's my argument, and also. Um, the games are different. Basketball isn't a snowbally game where you do great in the early game and then you can't lose anymore almost, you know? Like if the team you're a best of one in a game that has a certain duration like that has plenty of opportunity for teams to come back or change their strategy or take timeouts and figure out what to do, right? And you just
Mm-hmm.
Dota doesn't have that. Um, that's also like again, if you compare it to something like tennis, if you have a world's best player playing against the 20th seed, the world's best player will usually win, but sometimes they will lose. But they played across an entire game, and there was no like. I guess what I'm trying to say is the variance is way lower, and the only type like the thing I'm thinking with variance in tennis, for example, is what's the weather. That's the variance. Like if it's raining and they have rain delay, so they can't play,
Tennis
does
is
that
like
affect one player more than the other or
tennis is
something?
like a
That's
mini
like
best of
kind of where
five within one match, right? So
in a
it's an
sense,
interesting
yes.
way.
Tennis is special because it doesn't have a time limit, I guess, compared to like basketball or football or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think the way that those sports work is way more appealing for best of one. Like uh I don't think there is the same problems, if that makes sense. I don't know if I explained it well, but it mainly comes down to the variance and the strategical depth and how it goes with how the games are that you get to change your course during the game and whatnot. Um, like imagine if basketball had runes.
That would be amazing.
Like,
LeBron
suddenly you
James
just
with a
pick
double
up a
damage. Tasty.
double range rune.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
legit. Okay.
accuracy rune. I mean, that's what it is, right? There are luck factors and different things that happen, and all of the strategical stuff. And sports just are different from that. And that doesn't mean we should strive to do it like them. I think that's part of the problem with the argumentation, like when you compare the two, that a lot of the time people are just like, well, sports has done this for 100 years, so why don't we just copy it? Because it's not the same thing. That's
That could
basically
be
it.
a segment in itself. I love talking about the comparisons between esports and traditional sports and
Yeah, we
how.
could do that.
In fact, I'm going to
As long as
write
I get
that
to talk
down
about
here
tennis.
so that I remember to talk about it next time. Esports versus sports, because that's a very interesting topic that I like to talk about. Anyway,
I like that you
TI9.
capitalized them. Like,
That's for me to.
very
I'm
good.
going to bold it as well so that I remember. Okay, TI9 announced
I'll
August
underline
20th.
it for you while you talk.
Thank you. TI9 August 20th to 25th. Obviously, we know it's going to be in China. What are your thoughts on? Because we never talked about this publicly, at least. Your thoughts on TI being in China for the first time?
Honestly, it's one of those things where I just don't know. Like, last time it was in Canada for the first time, people weren't talking about that nearly as much than it being in China, just because it's the same continent as the US, right? But
It's also super close to Seattle. That's why you literally just take a
true,
ferry, right?
logistically, it was easy. The people that could usually go to TI could go to it again because, it's close by. It's not that big of a difference. And now it's a totally different playing field for fans. Like, there
More
will be
people
way
could
more
go.
Chinese fans. What's that?
More people could go to the Canada one because you're not as likely to be banned from Canada as you are in America these days.
I actually don't remember at the time. I think for some countries it was actually harder to get a Canada visa than
Really?
the US one. Yeah. I don't know about tourism. Maybe tourism is super easy or whatever. But anyway,
yeah.
Basically, so having it in China, I think, is a great opportunity in some ways, but it also has maybe some problems connected with it. So first of all, obviously the Western community has a history of hating on Chinese events because of past failures, like the Shanghai Major. That's one thing that people are probably concerned about. Will the production value be good? Will the signal be stable? Can we actually watch the games properly, or will there be mess ups? That's one thing. And then the other one is obviously, there you kind of take something away from some people and give it to someone else. They have had this TI in America for many years, and now you moved it for a year. And obviously, hardcore fans that loved going there are going to be upset or disappointed because, man, I've loved going to TI. Why does it have to be in China? From a business perspective, it's probably a really strong move because China is really on the way up. And I personally think if you are to host TI in a different country than the US, China is probably the biggest one. Like, Dota is huge. You'd host it in
Well,
China or in Russia
Dota
or in
has.
Ukraine.
I feel like it might be the opposite, actually. I think China's on the up in general, but Dota in China is not. It's actually struggled quite a bit.
Sure. You could say it's doing worse than it used to, but China's still the biggest country in Dota, right?
Yeah.
It has the most players. So there's a huge market still for them, even if it's on decline. It's still the strongest market Dota has. So hosting it there and making
Oh, it makes sense
it's
business-wise,
also a
for
huge
sure.
promo event for, even if, like, whether it's on the way up or down, putting it in China is a good move strategically, just because it could revitalize the game a bit in China, if that's a thing. Like, a lot of people that are maybe doing other stuff, wow, TI's in Shanghai, wow, okay, I gotta check that out. Maybe that's a good PR move. If it was on the way up, it's another way of just keeping the growth going. So it's just like a good argument for it. I think, honestly, just having TI there will be. I am very optimistic. I generally am. I think it's going to be great, as long as the production is up to par. I think that's the biggest concern that people have is,
I
will it
think
be
there's
good to
no
watch from
way.
home?
There's no way it's going to fail in that regard. I would be shocked
Because there's been
after.
problems in the past with China and Twitch and stuff, but I think
Yeah,
it's
but
been improved a lot.
this is
So
TI. I don't think Valve's
yeah,
going to fuck around on this one. I
no,
think
and
I agree. Business-wise, this is a really good move for Valve, going like giving some love to China, if you will. I think the biggest thing that you didn't quite touch on is the time difference, where you talked
that is
about how
true.
people
Yes,
going to the venue itself
yeah,
would be angry. That's like the hardcore people. I think most people that have watched TI in other time zones will not watch it live. Like, how many people are going to stay? Like, I actually don't know what time China games would start for you, but for us, it would be like at 10, 11 p.m. So and that's Pacific Standard. That's like 2 a.m. Eastern.
yeah.
People will not be watching TI live, a lot of them. Like, probably 90% of the people that have in the past. What time
Yeah,
is it
so
for
so
you then?
I think Shanghai is. Hang on, let me just look this up. I think it's plus. Is it +8 from me?
If it's at like 10 p.m. for me, it would be at like 7 a.m. for you. I want to say.
Okay. Oh, it's only a 6-hour difference actually to Shanghai for me.
Okay.
So if the game started, let's say they start at 12, they start at noon in China, then they would start at 6 a.m. So that means all of the evening games will be noon for Europe, for the entirety of Europe.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
the American viewership is definitely going to tank here. But then
yeah.
again, the Chinese viewership will be way bigger because last TI, right? Somebody has to suffer from this. You can't have everybody watch it at prime time.
So I'm
And
interested to see
then,
what the numbers are going to be because
yeah,
American viewers are probably on the low end of what typically watches Dota, right? Because we're talking about SEA, China, and general Europe area, just like Russia, all these big countries can actually watch it at a decent time because you guys had to watch it at a pretty shitty time before. Like you've been invited to every TI, so you don't know this, syndereN, but it's a really shitty time for you guys typically, right?
the early games would be good,
The
right?
early
The
games are
early group
fine.
games.
Yeah.
But the evening games would be past bedtime, right? If it's 6 p.m. Western, is 3 a.m. Central Europe. That's a 9-hour difference. So, but yeah, I honestly think the overall viewership on TI this year will probably be bigger just because it's way better for China, and China has a way stronger viewership than NA. But the numbers on Twitch might look worse because the Chinese don't watch Twitch. So,
Right.
and then it's about like who are you marketing for, right? The Chinese will be super happy, undoubtedly, especially like if it's a good production and the event is run well, they're going to be
Not
very
if they
happy
lose.
to have him very proud. that's a different story entirely. And if the trade-off is, then it like how much does the Twitch reception matter for the game itself? Like, is it a big failure if the game has, let's say, 10 or 20% less viewership on Twitch than it usually does, compared to being massive in China? Is that worth tanking? Probably. I'm just pulling this number out of my ass, by the way. I don't know
No,
how much it's
I
going to
agree.
hurt.
I think that's very safe to
But
say, actually.
yeah. And then, like, because then it's about how are people going to talk about it? Will people consider it a failure because there's slightly less viewership on Twitch? Or will they consider it a success because there was bigger viewership overall? Yeah, that's. I mean, we're just gonna have to wait and see, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think the media that cover the game. I think one of the biggest sales points that Valve have focused on a lot with TI is that the prize pool needs to be the biggest in esports history, right? Like that is the PR move of the tournament, is that it's the biggest and the best.
Do you think this is the year?
And I don't think that's going to change. I think having TI in China will boost the prize pool even higher, honestly. The Chinese are buying big time in Dota. I would love to see the numbers. Obviously, they don't release that, but I bet the numbers for who contributes to the prize pool of TI is so overwhelmingly Chinese compared to any other country that it's not even funny.
I have a random theory, syndereN. I have zero inside knowledge on this, but
okay.
I think that TI it'll come back to Seattle for TI 10. And I think that's the last TI.
Oh, that's a...
I think they're done with TI after that. I just have a feeling.
Why do you think so?
But
why? Because then it's time for Artifact to take over? Or?
I know that, like, this is from past experience.
I know that... laugh? Okay,
I know that... We'll talk about Artifact in a moment. Don't worry. You can laugh all you want. I know Valve employees don't like working on TI because it's a lot of work. And there are people that aren't even involved in Dota that are forced to kind of work there. So I know that.
And that's not everyone, right?
That's not everyone.
Surely
but
some people enjoy working
I think there's a shelf life on this tournament because in a certain sense, it does dictate the rest of the year. But at the same time, I think it's actually, we can argue this in another podcast. I think it actually hurts a lot of tournaments as well because there's such a discrepancy between TI and everything else.
TI is very big compared to everything else. Absolutely.
So I think things will dramatically, like I think if you have TI 9, for example, like let's say Valve wants to end TI, which again, this is just pulling this out of my ass. It's just a feeling. But if they're going to end it, it's going to be TI 10, right? It's a round number. Probably be back in Seattle for one last shebang. And then they change the system to be something where we have 5 majors that are much bigger, but just spread out more evenly. I don't know. I have no clue.
That is true. That could be a very interesting way of doing Dota, is to remove that like insanely big tournament and just spread the amount that it's worth across the year, which I think is way healthier for the game overall.
It is, yeah.
In terms of the pros and our ecosystem. For the fans, I don't know if it's much better or not. I think having the biggest tournament is a really big driving force behind Dota's success. So that's, I don't know. Like, as a competitor, I would love for the wealth to be spread more evenly across the year. I think the fact that one tournament is worth as much as the rest of the year combined is kind of crazy, and I don't know if there's like anything you can compare that to in any other game or sport where there's one thing that is worth that much compared to everything else.
All right, so I'm gonna write this down, bolding and underline. Yeah. Is TI killing Dota? Okay, well, that's another conversation for another time.
No,
okay.
What was I gonna say?
Please finish your thoughts. We need to move on.
Yeah. So you were saying that Valve are losing interest in working on it or whatever, or that people don't want to do it.
I mean, I don't know that for sure, but yeah.
Yeah, it's even if it's just speculation, you could. TI itself is such a strong brand that people will love to jump on the opportunity to work on it. So if it were the problem that they don't personally want to do it, they could outsource it, and they would easily find people that would love to.
I've actually questioned why they haven't done that before. Yeah,
like you could easily find contractors that would organize the whole thing from the bottom up, like everything.
See, I feel like if
and
you're
then the
doing
only
that,
thing that
then
would be
it's
the
not...
problem is the stuff you put in the game, right? If you have, let's say, workshop or whatever that Valve's own artists don't want to work on this, which I would find a bit weird because it's probably extremely profitable for them to make those items in the game, the ones that Valve put in the Immortals. But if they didn't want to do that either, they could also outsource that to workshop artists, and they would be all over that because of the amount of money that would be. So there's like, Dota's just so strong that of a game that you could just do that. If that was the concern,
if they want to revitalize the workshop itself, they could just go to the 5 major system and have
absolutely
like they can go hands off Dota.
We should talk about that too.
All right, put that down as another. Is workshop dead?
Is workshop is workshop dead or completely dead?
Is the workshop dead or artifact?
Oh, let's go.
Speaking of which, let's go to artifact. Okay,
I have so many bullet points for this. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, it's more just to remind me of what to talk. First of all, I want to say this was so when we posted the podcast on Reddit, there was some reaction. I will say now that it's a vast minority of people that are like this, but I just found it very interesting. Go ahead, you were going to say something.
It was overwhelmingly positive and became really like a big deal. I don't know. I was a bit surprised of how much people interacted with it and cared about that. I thought, a lot of people are probably going to like it, but I didn't expect it to blow up as much as it did. So that was super cool for me to see.
I agree. Yeah, no, I totally agree. But there was some negative comments, which I don't usually like to get into. I usually just me. I have thick skin. Because I have a thick body now, but but also it's not usually worth it because like if you run a YouTube channel, you just ignore all the negative comments anyway. You just get used to it. But it's just the perception that some people have that I'm crawling my way back to Dota, that I tried to sell out for Artifact. I just have some issues, and this is my own ego taking over just for a moment. Number one, I never said that I was quitting Dota. I said I'm taking a break from Dota. Completely different. Mm-hmm. Is it not okay for me to play other games, even if it's like literally directly involved with or directly related with Dota? And number three, I feel like I put in my time on this entire game and this community to, get the benefit of that, which I have gotten the benefit. I'm not saying I haven't.
So, I honestly think it's pretty simple when it comes to this. I don't know when it started, but in Dota has one of the most elitist communities out of any game. And I don't know why, but if personalities or pros or whatever do something else with a different game, there will be a minority that will just butcher them for it. Wow, you are betraying your game. That's what it is. Remember when Toby cast a CSGO tournament? How much he got mocked for that? Like, it's another Valve game. It's another huge esport. Of course, it's a great move for him to try to cast that. If he loves the game and he gets an opportunity, I mean, why not? It's not like Dota doesn't suffer because he casts a different tournament. Like, we have other casters, or he's not doing one event, so what? Like, he is also a person who is interested in his career and opportunities and whatever. Same with you. Like, Artifact, this is a great opportunity. You love the game. Why not follow your passion? It sucks that it didn't go too well so far, but I just don't get the mentality of all this elitism, and we always have to compare ourselves to League of Legends and say why we're better than League of Legends. And if somebody, God forbid, comes and says I like League of Legends more, they're just a shit human being. Like, it's not just that their taste is wrong. We have to hate them.
Well, here's the thing that doesn't make sense.
You know what it reminds me of? This reminds me of in music, right? If you were, let's say you were in your teens when Justin Bieber blew up. this is not my own personal experience, okay? But just if you were in your teens, if you were a 15-year-old guy and you actually liked Justin Bieber's music, you couldn't say it.
It's Nickelback.
It's just like
Nickelback.
There's just no way. I think Nickelback was softer. Like if you like this thing, and you're this kind of person in this age group, it's unacceptable for no reason.
Right.
Why would you even care? Like who cares? But people really care about this stuff for some reason. It's mind-boggling to me. It's always
It's
been.
weird
like,
because
who
like
gives a
I
shit,
said,
But
I played Dota, the original Dota for 5 years, Han for 2. And now how many years has Dota 2 been out? 7, 8 years? That's like 15 years of Dota, like essentially. Yeah. But like it was the same kind of thing with the toxic attitude towards Han people. When people from Han were coming to Dota 2, myself included, even though I played Dota for half a decade before that, and like all these ideas being thrown around, oh, this should be added, just getting shit on. Guess what? Most of that shit's in the game now. And everybody's fine with it. Like you move on. You can get ideas from other games. That's another topic we can talk about as well. Anyway,
people are but I think that goes across stuff though in a lot of ways, that people are very resistant to change. But Dota is like exceptionally, conservative in a way.
I thought of a new topic
with their game. Okay.
What is the most toxic game? You'd be surprised. I think, not to spoil this topic for another time, but if you're just playing the game, I actually think Counter-Strike is more toxic than Dota. Far more toxic. I could totally see that. It's really bad. Really bad. Anyway, on to Artifact. I just wanted to talk about kind of the...
I've heard, sorry, just quickly about Counter-Strike. I think it's the most toxic game because I saw on the news that it makes people aggressive.
Yes, that everything you see on the news is correct.
Yes.
So I want to talk a bit about the kind of the lifetime of Artifact, even though I personally don't think it's completely dead yet. It is definitely dormant at the moment. Because there's some misconceptions about what happened in the beta, right? The beta was a very long period. I was in the beta February of last year. You were in the beta a couple months later, I want to say. It wasn't like that much later. A couple months later, probably.
After TI.
Oh, okay, that was much later. So,
I think. Yes,
so I had been playing, and I think I was in like a couple of weeks before I got in was when a couple other people got in.
Am I thinking back 2 years? Whatever. Okay, go on. I don't remember.
Doesn't matter. Either way, the beta was a very long period. And even though people don't think this is, because a lot of people have been shitting on the people that were involved in the beta, and I think that's unwarranted. Because, again, me and pretty much everybody that played had complained about things like cheating death, like Axe being too powerful, things like Gust. Like, I was a big proponent of Gust just being way too OP, and some people actually disagree with me. Eat it! They nerfed it. So these things were brought to the attention of the team, and just nothing, like, over that 9, 10, 11-month period, whatever it was, almost nothing changed about the game.
I don't think a single card got nerfed that I remember until the game got released. Maybe
Cheating Death got nerfed from 3 mana to 5, and which wasn't the issue. The issue is just the card itself.
The concept
and Golden Ticket was not 7 gold, and it nerfed it to 9. Those are the two main changes, and then some rarity changes and whatnot. But they'd come out with like new features every now and then, and we'd, test them out and whatnot. But the one thing, again, nothing else changed during this entire period. But the one thing that people don't realize is we never tested monetization. We had no idea what it was going to be. They kind of just released it, and that was like the biggest complaint.
We had all cards. We had all. Well, we didn't have all the gameplay modes. When we were in the beta, there was only versus mode, right? We could just challenge each other or play against bots. That was the only thing. There was no Gauntlet. There was no.
They eventually put Gauntlet in. Yeah, I played Gauntlet a lot.
That was the very end of the beta. They put Gauntlet. No.
Gauntlet was a very long time. They had different.
Maybe I should just stop. I should just stop talking about this. You know this way better.
Very.
Sorry,
wrong.
Sir. Sorry.
That's fine.
Very wrong, apparently.
No, that's fine. We tested a bunch of stuff, but again, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that. So what happened with the game itself? They released it, and the community had a ton of complaints. A lot of them were justified, such as this one, like I say, they're all justified, and the first one I list is not. The perceived RNG by the community, which we can talk about it briefly if you want, but card games will have RNG. That's just how it is. of the popular card games, if you include Artifact into that, I know it's not popular right now. Has the least RNG. It is the most control RNG. That's not even an opinion. That's just I don't think you can argue against that. That's just the
which games are we comparing to here?
Like Hearthstone, Gwent. I guess I can't technically.
Do you think it has
Gwent.
less RNG than Gwent?
No, I actually have no idea about Gwent. I just made.
I don't think so.
Generally speaking, card games, it's going to have less RNG.
It's still it's very skill. It's a very skill-based game. I think that's the point. People were saying it's pure luck, which is completely wrong. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I also think that a lot of people just didn't want the game to succeed, which creates kind of a toxic atmosphere as well. Like Reddit was a shit show, for lack of a better word. A lot of people negatively review bombed it, which again, if it's based on the monetization model being something you didn't like or whatever, that's very justified. But I'm just saying, and I'm not saying this is like a bad thing that happened, right? Or not justified necessarily.
It's just what happened.
It's just what happened, and it contributed to the quote-unquote death of Artifact as it is right now. And then, of course, the big thing, people it lacked an achievement system of any kind.
A progression system, right? Like
right.
Where it felt.
Sure. And this makes me think, like, if they released it as an early release game, I don't know if they get that many complaints about it. It's like, oh, it's just in beta or whatever. But Valve felt very confident that, these features just aren't... Like, that's the thing that I can't... what's the best way to put this? I'm definitely in the minority because things like that achievement system don't matter to me. I don't care about them. I don't like grinding. Like the idea of grinding, that's why I never play MMOs. It's just miserable for me. Just general RPGs actually. But I understand that most people they do like that.
So have you ever played when you play CS:GO, do you care about your medal at all? Like not at all. You don't care.
Well, I care in a sense that,
because that's a progression system. That's your rank.
Right.
Right.
I feel
to
like
me,
the rank
that is a huge part of gameplay. Achievements and gaining rank and feeling like you're progressing and getting better is massively important to me. That is a huge part of replayability and why I will keep playing a game is that I feel like, wow, I can see I'm getting better or I'm closing in on the best players or something. It's a motivating factor. That's also, if you want to pull the MMO example up, I have a hard time joining already existing servers because I feel like I'm just starting at a massive deficit and I need to play catch up the whole time, which isn't a good, it's a bit of a different way, but it's again my competitive nature speaking that I feel like it sucks that I'm so far behind. Like I want even playing field with everyone else.
So I would say generally don't care about. I think CS is just it's an anomaly for me because it used to be my life.
Because you're passionate about the game. Yeah.
Well, not anymore.
So you never cared about your Dota MMR.
No, I care about my Dota MMR in the sense that it makes me look better as a personality that my MMR is higher. Other than that, I don't give a shit.
Okay.
Honestly.
Well, then you have a motivating factor, I guess.
Yes.
For other people, yeah, whatever it is. I honestly, so again, correct me if I'm wrong because you know way more about Artifact than I do. In the beta and after the game was released, there was no MMR, right? They never introduced a ranking list except your dex skill thingy where you increase until is it level 75? That's the max or whatever with some sort of they introduced.
There's two things now, but this was after release, after people complained. So that they're like trying to pour like a jug of water on a huge bonfire, right? It's not going to do much, but you have the the skill rating system, which felt more like grinding than it does skill for both draft and gauntlet, or draft and constructed. Goes up to 75, like you said. It's actually very easy to level up until you're like level, I think I'm 70 or something like that. Then after like the last 5 levels are pretty much impossible. I don't think anybody's actually gotten 75 yet. And then the other one is just like leveling your account. So it's just you play your 3 games a week and you get a bunch of levels and you get some free packs, stuff like that, which, it's nice. Again, it's not a motivating factor for me.
That kind of stuff is very good and should be in the game. I think that's great.
So
replayability.
Yeah. And so obviously those are a lot of the reasons that Artifact did not do too great. And then we get to Valve's last post. Of course, they kind of switched things up a couple months before that where I almost spoiled something. They what's the best way to put it? They kind of changed their strategy, right? They wanted to come out with more updates a little bit more regularly, actually balance things, which is a completely different ideology that they had before. They apparently fired Richard Garfield and his team, which I don't know how much of that a factor they had on the actual game balance, but apparently they did. Well, I shouldn't say we don't know if they actually got fired. Their contract ended, right?
Okay.
Which I guess we don't know.
I don't know
for
if
sure.
that was ever public. I haven't heard of this, I think.
It was definitely public.
Maybe it's common knowledge. Okay.
Definitely public. So then I thought, okay, they're just going to be coming out with some updates. I know, and this has been publicly talked about by other people that are, I think it was Richard Garfield maybe. The other expansion, or the expansion that we're going to come out with, is basically done. It's just sitting there. But instead of coming out with that and kind of putting Band-Aids on this huge, I keep coming with these terrible analogies, a huge gash, they felt the need to just restructure it completely, which I can understand. Obviously, I'm super disappointed by that decision, but I understand why they're doing it. Like things that they need mobile, they need this expansion. It's just new content. Like for me, I just needed new content. I needed new cards. I've been playing the same set for 9, 11, almost a year, over a year at this point.
Yeah.
So those are the things that were just needed. But I think they're going to be changing some crazy stuff. That's the question. Are they updating the game? What do you think? Slacks thinks it's dead. He said that publicly.
I'm thinking if it's a better strategy to... This might sound ridiculous, okay? But you take the game, you take the concepts that were successful, that you really liked about it, and you launch it as a new title with a different name. Because there's so much negativity connected with the Artifact brand at this point that even if you make the game super good and you revamp it as Artifact, tons of people will just be like, fuck Artifact. They won't even touch it because it's Artifact. But if you literally make the same packaging and you just call it something else, it might sound ridiculous, but I think it'll make a big difference.
I feel like that is kind of ridiculous. Are people that shallow just because of the name?
The name is just, it's just cursed at this point almost, you know? Like for me personally, it wouldn't make a difference. Like if they announced and they release more stuff and whatever, that'd be great. But I don't know. It's like if your personal brand gets hurt, right? If a brand of whatever gets hurt, you can like try to relaunch it in a different packaging or whatever. I don't know if that's something they're thinking about. If they're just gonna try to make a different kind of game and launch it on both platforms or whatever, what it's gonna look. It's just a damn it if you do, damn it if you don't situation, right? Because in a way, it's gonna make them look weak. But if they just keep it the way they are, it's maybe going to make them look stubborn. Like I don't know the best strategies. I'm not an expert at all on this, but it's just the name right now is weak, and that sucks because honestly, the game had a lot of potential, and in my opinion, was really good. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they should do, man.
There's also
I can't advise on this.
There was also misconceptions that I forgot to list. Like there's so many things. And again, I'm not saying it's just the community's fault because it's not. But the idea that the game is more expensive than other card games, it's just so untrue. I think they did the math. Of course, now it doesn't really matter because the cards are worth like nothing. But it was something like, let's say the whole set was, I can't remember, sorry. It's like a few $100s, which I know sounds expensive. But for a card game, if you compare it to other card games, it's just not.
If you were to buy every card in Hearthstone.
Right. And you can buy them directly. You don't need to do I don't know, the weird stuff that other card games do. But yeah, it was just very sad. I was so sad I made an Artifact song, syndereN. Did you listen to it?
I did. It was great.
So people,
you have a future there.
Yes. I was actually kind of disappointed with the views, I'm not going to lie. I think it's because it's Artifact. It actually got really good reception.
Yeah.
If you guys search for, what's it called? The Long Haul Dota Cinema, you can hear me sing for the first time ever publicly. I'm very self-conscious about my singing, by the way. I was made fun of.
You think you're terrible, or you think you're good?
No, what?
Or you're okay.
Self-conscious. Wait, what? How would you think you're good if you're self-conscious?
Doesn't self-conscious just mean that you are aware of where you stand? Like you know exactly how you would rate yourself. Isn't that what self-conscious is? Can't you be self-conscious about something you're good at?
I know what you're saying. You're conscious of your ability. That's what you're trying. I don't know what the word is, but self-conscious means that you're self-conscious.
Sorry, not
is
a native
thing.
Speaker.
This is the first time I'm correcting you, by the way. Holy shit! It's usually the other way around.
You've surely done that.
Self-conscious is like you're not confident. Actually, you're very uncertain.
Interesting.
But yeah, I loved I still love Artifact. I'm hoping that it has a revival at some point because it's like one of the most fun games I've ever played. Um, and I invested a lot, obviously, of time into it. And the reception from some people in the Artifact community was a little weird. Again, a small minority. I actually got a death threat because somebody was
Wait,
very
what?
angry that
At the song?
no, not the song. I'm just talking about the game in general, like my involvement in the game. They thought that I hyped it up so much that I killed the game, or what was the reasoning? It was they,
Okay.
the idea of me shilling. Like Slacks get this all the time as well. Like nobody got paid. Like I understand that some people wanted to get into it because it looks like the next big thing, and of course there's some degree of that for me and Slacks and everybody else. But I mean, I don't know how you can argue that we genuinely like the game. Like, still talking about it, and it's been dead for months now, essentially, right? So,
Okay, I just have to say, you know me.
did you get really low all of a sudden?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm I like language. So even though I trust you on a lot of things, language is not one of them, so I had to look it up.
Yes.
Self-conscious.
Yes.
Okay, are you ready? There are two definitions here. Number 1, conscious of one's own acts or states as belonging to or originating in oneself, aware of oneself as an individual, intensely aware of oneself, or produced or done with such awareness. The other meaning is uncomfortably conscious of oneself as an object of the observation of others, ill at ease. So it does mean both, right? Or am I misinterpreting this?
It
It
sounds
means
like it means both.
you're literally conscious of yourself as an individual, which I guess, or is that just as you being a person? Is this like some philosophical stuff or what?
All right. I'm gonna assume that you're correct. That both meanings. Here's the thing, though. I
The
can
one
tell you
you
from
are
experience.
using is the way more common one. I think
Yes,
that's what
not
how
by
people use
like
the
I've
word.
never heard anyone use it the other way. It doesn't make sense to me. Actually, I can't. Like, why would it mean literal opposite things? You know. Like self-conscious is almost like you're insecure about something. It's actually a
Okay, I'm
synonym.
I'm
I
reading
would
more
say.
and I'm reading more up on it now. It sounds like some philosophical shit. Let's not go there.
All right.
It's
So
cool.
moving on, Artifact
You were
is
right.
in a long slumber. So we hope that it arises at some point. All right. So we have a couple more things I want to talk about, syndereN. Some
Okay.
other things that happened in esports in the past week or so. So do you know who Hungrybox is?
I do. I watch his food videos on YouTube. They're awesome.
I had no idea that was a thing. But for people that don't know who that is, he's a Super Smash Brothers Melee player that
Yep.
I guess he plays a lot of Jigglypuff. Like
He
a
plays
lot.
Jigglypuff, which people hate. We can get to that.
Okay. And he won a
so-
tournament. And I'm
Yeah.
sure most people have heard about this by now, but a dead crab, was thrown at him. That fan will be permabanned from the event, and they've distributed his name to all the other tournaments, I suppose, to have him banned, to have similar treatment. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so first of all, I think a little bit of background story is, again, just to try to understand why stuff like this happens to this guy. I'm not agreeing with this behavior at all, obviously. I think it's should never happen. But in the Melee community, Jigglypuff is like the most controversial character because the gameplay of the character is very like defensive and different from others, where to a lot of people, the essence of Melee is this like very go at each other, play super aggressive, fight back and forth with swords or whatever. Like, I'm making it sound super stupid compared to what it actually is, but I do know that Jigglypuff is a very controversial character because it has a totally different playstyle, and a lot of people hate it and think it goes totally against the essence of the game and what it should be. It's like techies in Dota, you know? A lot of people think techies is fucking stupid and ruins the game, and they hate it. Now imagine Dota had a one-on-one mode, and there was a pro player who was really good at the game, who played techies every game. Then you could imagine the community would get pretty pissed. Like, wow, this is really stupid. This is not Dota. You know, he's playing techies all the time. Fuck this shit. I want to watch people play Shadow Fiend or Queen of Pain. And this guy is playing this character, and he's super good at it. And it's in the game. It's just part of the game. He's just playing the game and playing a strategy that's viable. The problem is not with the player. If that is a bad influence on the game, the problem is with the game. He's playing the game, and he's playing to win. That's how it is. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think You should always, if you're a competitive person and you're trying to win a game, you should do whatever you can to win as long as it's within the rules. So he's not cheating. He's just playing a character.
And I think
that
maybe
other
from a
people don't
fan's
like.
perspective, that again, I'm not justifying this at all, but there's no update. Like this is the old Smash, right? Like the really old one, I'm guessing.
Yes, Melee is the old one from GameCube.
Yeah, I assume it. There's no updates to this game, so
no.
The meta stays as it is for the most part. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's some variation with people figures things out because there's always innovations and whatnot, but the playstyle will stay the same for that character, right? So that's probably very frustrating.
Like the community and I think also parts of the pro community have suggested banning Jigglypuff from play because they think it's boring and stupid. But so okay, that's the background of this. That's the controversy around the character.
Okay.
So what I'm getting at here is the reason this happened to Hungrybox is almost guaranteed that he's playing Jigglypuff. That's
what
why.
What does a crab have to do with it? Or is it just he just threw a random thing?
The tournament was just in Canada, and I think there were crabs over there. I think so, something like that. I think. I don't think there was like a very deep meaning to it. Honestly.
I was waiting for it. That's what
I think it was literally in a city in Canada that has a lot of crabs and seafood. I think that's what it was. I don't think there was like any sort of like deeper meaning with like crab being cancer or something. I mean, maybe there's symbolic meaning. Crab is called Cancer in Latin, right?
Yeah,
that's the solar whatever,
it's the zodiac or whatever
star sign. Yeah, exactly. So maybe like that's very deep, right? Wow, I threw cancer at you. Get cancer or whatever, but
oh my god,
yeah, it's just shit, right? Like no matter how you look at it, it looks super bad. It's fucking stupid. Like these players are playing to win. They're not. It's not the Coliseum where you throw food at people or somebody who's a stand-up comedian where it's encouraged to throw food at them when they make a bad joke. These people are professional players. You also don't go to a football match and start throwing fucking crabs on the field. Like what is that? You know, it's just stupid.
Yeah,
I mean, in a sense, the thing that makes it a little bit funny is the fact that it was a crab, because it's just stupid. Like,
it's just random.
Like, it's just so random. It's so bizarre. It's bizarre, really. That's what it is. If they threw a tomato at him, the reaction would have been different. It would still be fucking annoying if it was at least a tomato and not a crab, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the real problem here is obviously, first of all, that kind of thing should never happen, that somebody does that. It's super disrespectful and just really bad. But maybe the bigger, in a sense, the root of the problem is also an issue, that the game can have a character that creates so much controversy that it actually gets people to do this stuff. Because I will almost guarantee it. I can't tell you for sure. I'll almost guarantee it that the guy who did this would not have done it to any other player or any other character. It's speculation, I know. Like maybe it's just a guy who went to this event and he was like, I'm gonna throw a crab, and it just happened during Hungrybox's win randomly. But
yeah, no, I agree with
it's really interesting that this kind of thing can happen, where it creates so much divide.
Well, it's also scary.
It's just a character in the game.
It's also scary because what if it could have been anything else, right? I mean, I don't know how the security is like. Yeah. Like in the U.S., what was it, a couple years ago? Maybe it was last year, the Madden shooting, which just like unbelievable. I mean, it's typical for America, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing, obviously.
No.
But I believe like most esports events have upped their security as a result. I don't know. Like you're not going to disallow somebody from bringing a fucking crab in there, right? So if you can eat, you can eat.
Dude, it's so stupid, right? It's like the situation's so stupid, but it still makes me.
It's like it's serious, chuckle, you know? But then when I think of the crab, I laugh.
It's just so fucking dumb. You can't help but have a little giggle at it.
Okay, moving on. Yeah. You hear about Echo Fox?
I did, yes.
Do you know who Rick Fox? Did you know who Rick Fox was before this?
He is somebody in some American sport.
Correct. He was a Lakers player, and I hated him, actually. Yes, basketball, NBA player. Gotcha. I really hated him as a player because he did some sketchy stuff against the Suns. It's just a personal bias. But the thing I do like about him is that he got into esports, and he created his name is Rick Fox, of course, and he created the organization Echo Fox. And he is now leaving the organization because a shareholder, who I assume has a shit ton of money, called him the N-word, among other people, I think. And obviously Rick Fox is black. Not that I guess that doesn't really matter, but either way, this is the thing that I found interesting, though, because a lot of people didn't realize it, and this is going to be an amazing segue. He left his own organization. It means that this shareholder had the majority ownership, most likely. He has a shit ton of money in the team. It means Rick Fox, even though his name is on it, didn't have full
Didn't
control,
own the team.
obviously.
Yeah.
Right? What do you think about this situation?
Mhm. I feel like I've heard of it before, but I'm sure you're going to enlighten me again later. At some point. You never know.
We're getting to that next. Yes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Kind of.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like, what is there to say? It's just shit, you know? Like, I don't know. What else can you say? It's a super shit situation. Was it the right move to leave? Could he have done something else? Could he have, handled it in a different way that would make the shareholder end up being the one who had to take his leave or whatever? Somehow, because the PR was too bad. I mean, that's clearly very fucking bad PR. I would say, especially in an American organization.
I
think
feel
this
like
kind
it
of stuff
kills the org, actually. I mean, I could be wrong.
that he leaves or that thing happened.
Both things happening, I think, kills it. Who wants to sponsor this team? Who wants to sponsor?
If that's his read on the situation, like if that's his read on it, this is the ultimate power play. He's like,
Yes.
Fuck you. I'm just gonna leave, and you can sit with these pieces, and I just ruined it for you. He could just go and make a new org if he wants. Like, if he doesn't have the majority of the share, he might have made profit of it already, or taken maybe a minimal loss compared to his wealth. And he's just like, fuck it, I don't need to put up with this shit. I'm too proud for this. Which I'm using the word proud not in a negative context here. Like, he doesn't need to put up with the shit. So sure, like, I would imagine that for Rick, one of two things will probably happen. If he really liked esports, what it genuinely seemed like he did. I don't think he was just putting on a face for the camera or whatever. I think he really loved his team. He will probably either invest into a different org and become a shareholder in it without maybe necessarily having the majority, or he will make a new org and make sure that he maintains the majority so this never happens again. I think one of those two things will happen. So either way, if he stays in esports, it's good for esports. He's passionate. He has money. He has contacts, influence. He can help grow the game, the games that he is interested in. It's all good. You don't need to deal with that kind of shit. Just get it out of there. And I think it's really good to make a powerful stance on it too. Like, just really destroy it, Make a really powerful statement is always going to be more impactful.
I'm very interested to see what happens with that org now, because I do.
You got to be worried
if
you're another investor in that org.
If I was an investor, I'd be out of there immediately if I could. I don't know what Everybody has different contracts and whatnot. So
yeah, who wants to buy the shares?
Yeah, that's also true. You can always change the name and get rid of that shareholder and apologize.
Change the name to Artifact.
Then it'll die. All right. So that leads us into the final thing I want to talk about today, syndereN.
Okay.
Where do I begin? Digital chaos. I'm wearing the shirt today. For those that are watching on video. If you're watching on audio, just visualize digital chaos on a shirt, and that's what
2009.
whoever's watching on. There's some people like that. Okay. So as you guys know, and you can interject anytime you like. I don't want this to be a monologue necessarily, syndereN. My NDA is up, so I can technically talk about anything I want, but I will not. I will say I think I'd like to go over the full year and a half that I was with the org and talk about what happened and kind of give a little taste of what it was like. But there's some things I will not talk about because what is the reason that I can't talk about, or I won't talk about it. I don't know. I can't really say, I guess.
Because it feels
weird.
Wrong?
It feels right to do it, but I do need some ammunition if things ever get hairy in the future. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
That's the best way I can put it. So people ask how the organization started. I met a millionaire, an eccentric millionaire, as we'll call him.
From now on, EM.
EM. And God, why am I so... this is weird to talk about. Anyway, we both wanted to make a team. We both lived in Arizona, and it just sounded like a lot of fun. Obviously, it's something I've always wanted to do, like being involved in or being a fan of traditional sports. It's just like you always want to be the general manager. That is like the dream job. That is like, if somebody can make me GM of the Suns right now, I would like give up everything. It would just be super fun, and I'd be super into it. Anyway, we talked about making a team, and we organized a lot of thoughts. Tried to, I think, when when did we actually make it? It was after TI5, right? So 6 months prior to that, we tried getting a team. I can't remember who it was at this point. Like at one of the roster shuffles, just didn't happen. It wasn't realistic. So we waited until after TI5, where EG won, and they kicked AUI. We met with some players, and this is an interesting thing that I think people will find maybe shocking is not the right word, but we had a choice of 2 teams, syndereN. You remember this? I've definitely told you pretty much everything about this.
It's a long time ago, but when you say it, I've definitely heard it before.
So the player that I always wanted, and the reason I wanted to make a team was because I really wanted one specific player, because he had been my favorite player since Han. Very flashy, awesome to watch, super nice guy, super chill. Just seemed like it would be a perfect match, if you will. His name was No Tail. His name is No Tail, actually. And we met with him.
Oh,
yes, it was syndereN. All
yes.
So I met with No Tail at TI, and we just talked to him about, potentially getting an org organized for him and all that stuff. And he didn't have a team at the time. We actually sat down with Kuroki as well. He was just sitting in on it. Fast forward a couple weeks later, because the shuffle is still occurring, things are still transpiring, if you will. And that's when like AUI got kicked, because I don't think it was immediately after TF. If I remember correctly, because he was never really on our radar. And he built a team NA based with like Bulba and everybody else, TC. So we had a choice technically of No Tail, who put together this team, which is OG. They weren't called that, of course. It was Monkey Business. Or this NA team, which, if I'm being honest, I preferred OG at the time, but NA did make more logistical sense because they're already in North America. It's going to be way easier to do, boot camps and whatnot. So we chose AUI instead of the reason I got involved in the team building aspect in general. So that team with AUI was not successful at all. Obviously, it was a disaster. Of course, we tried to do our best I wanted to, like, the entire vision of the team was to make an organization that was kind of different than everybody else. Take care of the players first, worry about everything else second. And then the roster shuffle of the following year occurred, and amongst it were AUI and Bulba. We're just putting together a roster that was very nice, actually, and I was extremely excited. It was AUI, I'm trying to remember everybody. We had Kick TC and Yawar, I believe. So it was AUI, Bulba. We brought Resolution in to play the mid role at the time.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm trying to remember everybody else on the roster. Anyway, the roster, like in scrims and whatnot, it was super solid. We're like, finally, we have like this roster that clicks. It's going to be great. And then EG gives an offer to both AUI and Bulba, and they just leave. And this is like 2 days before the roster lock. So we
Yikes.
obviously are crushed by this news, because the organization has been the team, I shouldn't say the organization, the team has been a complete disaster to that point. We'd given up everything to try to make this work. And then obviously Resolution is kind of in limbo. Weehaw and Misery get kicked. So we kind of pick up these leftovers with Moo and Soxa. And the roster looks, at the time, it was pretty good on paper. It wasn't like, oh my God. I mean, it was exciting, of course, because we're getting new people, kind of new blood, if you will, bringing them to the United States. Actually got them a team house, which is a video on this on the channel, actually. Team house that was in walking distance of the house that Nikki and I were at the time, because we were doing everything with the team, essentially. So that was super fun, because you get to interact with the players a lot. You get to watch the matches in person. That was a super fun time for me personally. But they didn't perform particularly well. And again, I've left out a lot of stuff, but I'm going to kind of go over a bit now. The Manila Major, they did very poorly after a good start. I think we actually got to the upper bracket right away, and then we just lost out completely. So I think it was 12th place or something like that.
That would be, yes.
Something
9
like
to 12.
Yeah, I think that was a big disappointment. And all the while, how do I paint this picture for people to understand? The organization itself was super toxic behind the scenes. Like, I could go on for days. It was as toxic as it can be, like stressful working environment. It was really bad. People were talking about, okay, the thing I should preface before this, of course, I am a minority owner technically, even though I own a pretty large portion of the team. Minority owner. There was a majority owner that obviously had control of everything. So the closest comparison I can make is like, this is probably like whatever sports you watch, there's something similar. There's an owner, and then there's a general manager. The general manager makes the decisions. The owner vetoes if he wants, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we had in place. I was kind of the GM, except of course I had ownership as well, just not majority, right? So
yeah,
all the while, like it was very toxic, like I said, but it got especially bad during Manila Major. It was talking about selling the team, kicking the players. He would, this one's funny. And I think I'm starting to learn more day by day, or now that more I think about it again. He would talk, so Nikki was the manager. He would talk crap about me to Nikki. And then he would also talk crap about Nikki to me, as if we don't live in the same house. I always found that just like mind boggling. Like how, and then I realized that he actually just does that to everybody, right? Or at least I wouldn't be surprised. So he's talking about doing all this stuff because they performed so poorly. And then right before TI, of course, we had just lost a bunch of tournaments, like I think the Summit or something like that. Mm-hmm. And Nikki, aka Sajidine, quit because things got really bad between the two of them. She found out she was going to get fired after TI. So she's like, well, I'm just going to quit now then. Like, what's the point? Of course, it goes much, much deeper than that, but I won't get into it. So we get on to TI 6, and I'm kind of taking over the managerial duties, which is very stressful in itself. TI 6 rolls around, like I said. We have 2 coaches. There's so many interesting stories. Oh, my God. The coaches are PyCat and Lumden, okay? And there's drama in itself within this whole thing as well. But the thing I will talk about is that both coaches were very important to the team, regardless of players on the team thinking otherwise. Because you had, for example, like, and you've been a coach many times, syndereN, and I'm sure you've been coached. You've been
not
a
many
coach.
Times.
What do you mean?
I coached Alliance one event.
That's it? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, but you have the coach's mentality at the very least.
I think.
You had
one event and one boot camp or something. Whatever.
And I think you kind of encompass what everybody's looking for because you kind of meld in exactly, or you adapt exactly what is needed of you. So, for example, PyCat was really good at drafting, and Misery was just like on him. Like they were both perfect pair. And Moo doesn't necessarily listen to PyCat all that much. And then Resolution, Saksa, and Weehaw listen to PyCat. It was just like a normal coach. And then you have Lumden, who is maybe not as mechanically skilled in terms of talking about that kind of stuff with the players, but he was like a life coach to Moo, for example, because Moo was very moody. Not to throw a pun in there. Very moody.
Yeah.
And you just needed somebody like with positive reinforcement. He was a huge help to Moo. Like this, Moo played amazing at that tournament, like God tier.
Yeah, he was super good.
And then Weehaw, for example, this is just a random example. He didn't really have much of an opinion on Lumden, I don't think, but there was one specific mechanic that Lumden brought up, which is actually, I think, I'm trying to think of what it was. I'm going to make an example here. I don't know if it's exactly the same thing, but I think it was because at the time it wasn't maybe as common knowledge as it is now, the aggroing creeps from across the map in the mid lane. We're talking about mid lane specifically for Weehaw. He didn't know how to do that. He didn't know that was a thing. There's something like that. Weehaw's worst aspect of his entire time with DC was his laning stage. It was shit. He had garbage laning stage, but he was extremely skilled at spell casting, and once he got items, he was unstoppable. If you fix that laning stage, which that one little thing did, apparently, it changed everything. So the team just clicked all of a sudden. It felt like an OG thing from this last tournament. You had this like huge burst. There was a game specifically where it all started with the momentum, where Resolution was morphling and he backdoored like 2 barracks and everybody was going crazy. This was in the group stage. And literally that one game, everything changed. The team that had just been shit on the last 6 months became an absolute powerhouse. And their spirits were high. It was actually really cool to see something transpire like that, because if I'm being honest, TI placement was a complete fluke. Second place, I mean, if history shows anything, they placed first at ESL 1 Genting later on. Every other tournament other than TI was dog shit, right? And ESL 1 Genting was after any norm. I think it was that 7.0 patch, thing that changed everything. So that in itself, you can't even take that with a grain of salt. So that was, TI 6 was a complete fluke, because the team just never worked together, you know? But anyway, back to the story. So TI 6 rolls around and we do well, second place, beyond expectations. I didn't get any prize pool. I mean, this is a whole nother story, but it was negotiated without my knowledge that we would not keep any prize pool from the org, which I think is what's a nice way to if I had control of the org, I would never agree to not keep any prize pool, because especially with this kind of org where we're taking care of everything, we're team housing with like literally everything we're taking care of. I think it's a joke not to get any prize pool, just for the record. But anyway, going on past that. So the team was successful, and the owner started taking more interest in the team because of the success, and wanted to move the players to his complex, if you will. And this was 45 minutes away from me. So after that happened, I started losing touch with the players. I still watched their scrims, but wasn't really taking part in a lot of, team activity. We had just kicked Moo. Forgot to mention that, which was a team decision. We picked up Moon Meander instead. And the funny thing, oh my God, I wish I could talk about a lot of this stuff. But so the owner moved the players to his complex to be more involved, and he would take them to party. Like a couple of players really like to party, as you probably know who I'm talking about. They're really party fans. But he would take them to like raves and some crazy like stuff in Vegas, like a day before they need to play like really important matches, and then they play horribly the next day, and then he gets really, really angry. Of course, he never gets angry with the players, I don't think, just behind the scenes kind of stuff. But that's just a small taste of kind of the toxicity involved. And then, as we start to lose touch with the team, we go to Boston Major, and the manager at the time did something that I consider to be completely unforgivable, and I want to fire her, and she was not fired. Let's just say that. And that's, again, other reasons that I won't get into. God, this story is so shit because I can't talk about some of the stuff, syndereN. And then ESL 1 Genting occurs like we talked about, and they won, and then everybody kind of separates. They go on to Planet Odd. I'm out, and that's that. So that's the... What's it called when you... Is it an abridged version? Is that the right word? What's it called when you're reading something that's classified and it's blocked out? You know what I mean?
Censored version? What do you mean?
Sure. I guess that. Redacted. Thank you, chat.
Oh, yeah.
That is the redacted version of the DC story. So all in all, it was a great experience because I learned a lot. But extremely toxic.
But
I learned a lot about human nature, syndereN. And I talked to you a few times about this, and you think
that's the problem when you hang with people like me. You just get a very optimistic view on life.
Yeah, you're very unique, right? Because you watch movies of certain individuals, and you're like, "There's no way that's real." And then, like, you watch Trump on TV, and you're like, "That can't be a real human being. That's fake, right? That's a cartoon character." But they exist, and it's mind-boggling, to say the least. So that is the end of the story.
I'm sorry that I warped your view on reality, got you into trouble, because I made you too optimistic and positive and, naive.
You berate me all the time about vocabulary and grammar. I think you're just fine, buddy. Anyway, sorry to go off on like such a down note / me just on a monologue. I just had to get that story out there, and now that it's out there, I don't have to talk about it ever again.
Okay, so it's 100% on you how much you want to talk about, because I know, like, I was just paying a bit attention to what chat was talking about this stuff, and there's reasons why you're not saying stuff that you're not saying. But I'm sure you've read about all the stuff that was aired on Reddit about Loomdon, like a month or two ago.
Yes.
I would guess you had read about that.
My phone number was posted publicly in that drama.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's get doxxed as well. That's perfect icing on the cake for this story.
So what about it?
So what about that? Because the way you're presenting this case right now is that Loomdon was a great coach. He was really useful for the team, and some people didn't really mind too much, and for others it was really great. But it didn't sound like anybody hated him or had really negative experiences.
Oh,
with
they
him. But
did.
Then
No, they did.
Oh, they did. Okay.
I'm not going to name names.
The stuff you're reading. No, you don't have to put names. It's more like you presented it in a very positive way when everything I have read has been really negative. So I was wondering, like, if your experience was totally different. Or...
In terms of the drama, I have nothing to say because I don't know anything about it, honestly. I barely even read what the drama was. But during the actual tournament itself, someone really hated him that was on the team. Okay. Which, again, there's no point in even talking about individuals.
No, you don't have to drop names. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think internally there was a debate whether he was useful or not. I just wanted to, I have no qualms about anybody or any past experience with any of the players or coaches, but he definitely had value. I mean, Pycat was considered the main coach, but I think Loomdon, take out one of those people, the team doesn't even get top 8. Literally, that is 100% going to happen.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Like one person out of the equation. Like that tournament was a perfect storm. It was a fluke. You replay that tournament, it will not happen. So
that's what I heard about OG last TI as well. That was a fluke too, because now they're not playing. No, it's just funny how the community is like fluke TI. We don't like these winners. Okay.
Well, I think there's
I mean, let's not say the community like it's one entity, because that's not true. Like, a lot of people were super happy for OG and thought they were going to be great. I personally wouldn't even have placed them top 8. So for me, it was a huge surprise. But the whole thing about this whole fluke thing is basically the way you prove that it wasn't a fluke is that you have success afterwards. And they haven't had that. So, I mean, the argument...
A lot of TI teams have not had
pretty
success
strong
after.
Right now, right? Yeah. Right. Some did. But with, like, for example, Liquid, it's hard to say that it was nobody's saying it was a fluke TI for Liquid, because they were good going into TI. They won multiple tournaments after TI, and they have stayed at the top since. Like, they haven't been winning tournaments, but they have still been... They've had one or two disappointing results, but they've always been in contention, right? Like, they still are considered a powerhouse. Even if they have one or two bad tournaments, people will still consider Liquid a top team. But for OG, all it took was like one or two tournaments being bad, and people are just, because like they didn't feel like OG were as strong going into TI as Liquid were in TI 7, and I think that is completely fair to say. But that also means that again, I'm going to say grace period. The grace period that the negative part of the community about these players will give them is way shorter. It's like, okay, you won TI, prove it. Prove that you're this good, or that it wasn't a fluke. And then if they don't do it quickly, they're like, yep, it was a fluke.
Yeah, and I think...
But at the same time, they didn't play with a full roster, though. They didn't play with Ana since TI. And it's important. The whole recipe is important. Let's see now how it goes. And then... There's
a certain aspect, and we'll finish on this, if you don't mind. There's a certain aspect that is usually brought up a lot in traditional sports that is not... I've mentioned it before, and people kind of scoff at it. This was years ago. The idea of momentum is so fucking gigantic. And this is you can call it a fluke. I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't even mean that negatively when I say fluke, but the way that OG won last year and the way that we got second at TI 6, those are built off of pure momentum based on circumstances that occur and how you react to them. And like just having this feeling like OG they wanted it more than anybody, period. Like, that's not even a question. And it actually helped them win games. And it was the same way for DC. So, yeah. That is all. We'll end on that cough. So,
let's carry on some momentum to next week.
Yes. We skipped a few topics that we will get to eventually.
Ending on a cliffhanger here.
What's the cliffhanger?
I don't know. That's how you carry on momentum, right?
Oh, okay.
So say something really controversial, and then we just cut the stream instantly.
syndereN is a beautiful man. So closing thoughts.
Oh, shit, dude. I want to hear more about that.
Make sure that you guys post your questions or topics in either tweet at us or put them in the comments of the YouTube video that will eventually come. And we will try to get to every topic and question at some point in time. So thanks for watching, guys. Remember, we love you.
Or listening.
What did I say? Watch. Oh, fuck. This was supposed to be catered to. All right, we're restarting
It's
this
a podcast. You're listening.
Restarting the episode. Bye.